Hi, my name is Anne Marie, and today I'm going to be talking about the physics of Spider-Man. So, Spider-Man is one of my favorite Marvel heroes. Ever since I was a little kid, I've loved Spider-Man, but I've never really thought about the science that goes into making these movies or making this world. I've never really thought into it, but this project has given me the opportunity to look into it and learn a little bit more about the mistakes that Spider-Man made. So, just like us common folk, superheroes, they're going to need to follow the laws of physics. So, whether this means the Newton laws of motion or Schrodinger's equation, they're going to have to follow it like the rest of us to avoid sticky situations like Spider Man got himself into. I guess their superpowers give them some sort of leeway where they can escape these laws, but still, it'll come around and bite them in the butt in the end. In today, this presentation, I'm going to be talking about or reiterating the idea that was brought up by Jim Kakaleos in his book, The Physics of Superheroes, where he talks about common mistakes made by superheroes that didn't end up so well. So I'm going to start off by going about some things that Spidey really should have known before he went to go save his girlfriend. I'm going to start talking about change in momentum, which is shown by the little letter P. And so change in momentum occurs when there is a velocity, or in other words, speed or mass change. So the formula for this is going to be momentum, you can see the little letter P there, equals mass times the change in velocity. So the only way you can change this momentum is by applying a force for the given amount of time. And if an object's momentum changes while the mass remains the same, the velocity changes and the acceleration occurs. So I'm also, in the next slide, I'm going to be talking about Newton's second law. And so in Newton's second law, this change is caused by a force. So Newton's second law states that the acceleration of an object is directly related to the net force and inversely related to its mass. So this formula is going to be Newton's second law of motion, described by force equals mass times acceleration. Then I also want to talk about Newton's first law of motion because it all applies to this situation. So this is going to state that an object in motion at a constant speed or going in a straight line or is at rest will remain at rest or continue in that straight line until a force is acted upon it. And so this is going to be dealing with the net force, which is basically the vector sum of forces acting on a body. So this net force is going to equal 0. And so the object is also going to have 0 acceleration. So net force equals 0, and then the object will have 0 acceleration. So now I hope you enjoy this little skit that I put together talking about the scene of the accident. George Washington Bridge in New York City. I have you now, Gwen. Nothing will stop me, not even your precious Spider-Man.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Let her go, Green Goblin.
Never. What are you gonna do? Stop me?
Yes. Oh!
Spider-Man, help me!
I got you. Gwen. Oh no. I should have learned physics.
So the big question on everybody's mind is, was it the fall that killed Gwen or the force of Spider-Man's webbing? So some quick factors to consider. So in like most problems, there's going to be no air resistance. We're not going to consider that. Gwen's weight is 50 kilograms, which translates to 110 pounds. So her fall from the bridge is going to be about 100 meters. We got to include the acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meters per second squared. And the time that it takes for Spidey to halt her fall is going to be about half a second, so 0.5 seconds. So to calculate Stacy's velocity right before the web catches her feet, I'm going to be using the formula for velocity, which is v squared equals 2 times g times height. So when we fill that in, it's going to be v squared times 2 times the 9.8 meters squared for the acceleration due to gravity, and then the height of 100 meters. And when I calculated this, it came out to approximately about a velocity of 45 meters per second. So the final portion of this is going to be calculating the force of Spidey's web when it attached to Gwen's foot. So normally the equation that is going to be used is force equals mass times acceleration. For this though, I wanted to be a little bit more specific on impulse. So it's going to be force times time equals mass times a change in velocity. And then that change in velocity, so we went from 45 meters per second to a straight dead 0, and that is when she, so, and also for impulse is going to be, so basically explaining, if you change an object's momentum and motion, the force will need to be applied for a certain duration of time. So working through this, we want to solve for F. So you have F times 0.5 seconds equals 50 kilograms times 45 meters per second. So that it's going to be that change in velocity. I ended up getting a total of 4,500 newtons, which roughly translates to 450 kilograms, which is very crazy because this is 9 times Gwen's weight. No wonder why she bit the dust. So the sad moral of this story is if the time needed is large, then the force needed is less. So in this scenario, Spider-Man really didn't have enough time to slow down Gwen's descent, and the force was so large and the time was so minimal that it was just an instant reaction, instant snap, and he unfortunately lost his girlfriend. But if Spider-Man only took Professor Durandon's class and learned about physics, he'd still have a girlfriend. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week.